What if I told you someone bought a piece of land for $1.8 million and just 15 months later, it was appraised at 5.4 million? No apartments built, no tenants, no rent collected. So where did the extra $3.6 million come from?
Today's guest would argue that some of the biggest value in real estate isn't created during construction, it's created long before a shovel even hits the ground. Developers don't just see land, they see zoning, infrastructure, politics, population growth, and possibility. And today we're going to talk about how they learn and help everyone see what everyone misses.
Welcome back to the SARE Ladies Podcast. I'm Ashley Cow.
I'm Anita Wong. And today we are going to be joined by Chang Liang, managing partner of Collective Acre, where he specializes in land entitlement and development. So he really focuses on raw land acquisition, securing utilities, zoning, and partnering with local municipalities to transform raw land into build-ready subdivision communities. So Ashley, what were your favorite parts about the episode?
Well, this is an asset class that's not really talked about, and so I really enjoyed the conversation just because I was a student, right, going in not knowing much about land development, and so I think a lot of land development is not just engineering, but there's a lot of other factors that get the deals done that Chang talked about, and then he also gave some great advice on how he got into the space and how he was able to get doors open for him by doing what he did. And so I thought that was some really good pieces of advice there. And then we just had a really good conversation on just finding, he has partners in these deals. And so I think he talked about just how finding the right partners and having complementary skill sets really allowed them to scale and do what they do.
Yeah. And I love that it's really kind of a niche kind of thing, right? Whereas buying short-term rental, long-term rentals is really, there's a lot of people in that space already. So definitely really great conversation. So whether you're an investor, entrepreneur, or simply curious about how cities get built, this episode is for you. So without further ado, here we go.
Welcome to the SARE Ladies Podcast. This is where Asian American Pacific Islander women carve out their own space in real estate and shake up the status quo. Join your hosts, Anita Wong and Ashley Cow, as they dive deep into bold strategies, personal growth, and everything it takes to own it. From building wealth to boosting confidence. Let's jump in.
Hey everyone, welcome to the SARE Ladies Podcast, and welcome Chang, our brother from another mother. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I just had some viral fish sandwich and it was incredible.
Say more.
Yeah, there's this viral Chinese bakery in San Leandro, and they were selling $3.50 fish fillet sandwiches, and they were so fresh, so tender, right out of the oven. And man, my mouth was dancing this morning.
Is this the first time you tried it? Or
yeah, it was my first time. I waited maybe like 8 months because like the lines were way too long, and I was like, I do not want to be waiting 2 hours. So like this morning we went when it right open, and so we waited maybe like 10 minutes altogether.
Damn. So
we have
they open at like 9 o'clock?
No, they opened at like I think 7:30.
Damn.
We have 4 fish sandwiches, 2 of the green onion buns, the veg and pork buns, and I had a taro bun. Everything was like $25.25. It was incredible.
Amazing.
And it was delicious.
It seems like a fish sandwich to have like at 7:30 in the morning.
Okay, yes, but hear me out. It was delicious.
Worth it.
Yeah.
It was worth it.
All right. You know what? I'm definitely gonna try this. I'll definitely bring Ashley one as well. Now Ashley was like, "No, I must have one."
I know.
Yes.
Actually, no lies. The fish sandwich is my favorite at McDonald's. Like,
yes,
tried and true.
One of my top ones. Anything that looks like a burger, I'll eat right now. So.
Oh, Ash.
Well, I'm excited to have you, Chang. And, also, if you don't know, Chang is a big foodie as well. I definitely go, whenever I'm in Dallas, I feel like I always think about what would Chang eat. And because seriously, I think I've had like 3 of the restaurants that Chang has recommended, and they were all 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10.
I will plus one that too. Chang has some good
Yes.
recommendations. So
It just brings so much joy when you're eating good food with good company, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for our listeners that don't know Chang yet, we're actually going to start off with a rapid fire before we kick into our topic, which is land development. And so, okay, Chang, want you to answer these as concisely as you possibly can. Okay, so 1, fill in the blank. Real estate is really a business of?
Of relationship and integrity.
I like that.
Okay. So if you can only keep one, land, apartments, or cash, what are you choosing and why?
It depends. For now, I would say land, but it still depends on like the location, if there are utilities nearby, what is the zoning. So it really depends. It's either for me land or cash.
Land or cash. Okay. Why not apartments?
Apartments, because you could build apartments on land. So
Okay.
if you have land and you take it through the full cycle, there should be enough equity built in for you to build that apartment.
Yeah, you should say land and cash so you
Yeah.
can build apartments.
Right?
You're right. That makes sense. So what's one piece of real estate advice that everyone repeats but you completely disagree with?
Ooh. I think this could be a little controversial, but a lot of people say stick to one asset class, and I'm just slightly different. I've dabbled in a lot of different asset classes. And my takeaway here is it's just as powerful to know what you don't want or like to invest in as much as you do. And there's no better way to learn something unless you're physically like in it. So yeah, the thing is, a lot of people say stick with one asset class. I think if you are laser focused, you could stick to multiple asset classes and still do well.
Got it. Okay. List one productivity ritual you can't do without.
Hot yoga.
Hot yoga. I feel like you're like number 1 fan of hot yoga.
Yeah, because it's such a good like physical and mental reset. And when you have these type of like really intentional resets, it just increases the productivity in ways that I don't think supplements can replenish.
Oh, okay. So finish the sentence. Success isn't about building more projects. It's about?
It's about getting your time back, your time, freedom, and choice back.
I thought you were going to say eating more fish sandwiches.
Yes, and eating more fish sandwiches at 7 a.m.
Hell yeah.
More time to eat fish sandwiches. That's what it is.
Yes.
I love that. Okay, so we're going to dive into our first question. So most people drive past a piece of vacant land and see a patch of dirt. You see a neighborhood. What are you seeing that everyone else misses?
Path of growth is what I see. And I think a lot of investors define path of growth based on job growth, based on migration growth. But I think there is actually a more scientific way to look at growth that a lot of people don't understand is following where the cities are planning to expand their utilities, mainly water and sewer lines. So if you go into any planning and zoning pages of a city's website, you should be able to see their comprehensive plan. Their comprehensive plan literally illustrates where do the city officials also see the path of growth, because their path of growth is where they will install and expand their water and sewer capacities. that's what I see when I see empty land. We know exactly where the main city water lines, main city sewer lines are, and we also know where the cities are planning to expand these, and that is really a more, for us, a scientific way to see where do even the city officials think the city is growing towards, and that's the path of growth that we like to acquire our land at.
I see. So basically, it's sort of like wherever they're expanding, they're putting in the underground infrastructure first, and you're looking at the opportunities. So are you buying land adjacent to these utility lines or on top of them? Like what are you looking at exactly?
Yeah, so one of the most expensive development costs is the offsite utilities cost, right? So say you have a plot of land that is half mile away from the city main sewer and water lines. You have to build a connection in between, and that connection, you're gonna have to get easements. You're gonna have to, run half a mile of piping to get to your site. Those offsite costs a lot of times are not reflected in your NOI, and so it's a lot of money that doesn't really go towards a return on your project. So if you could find land that is adjacent to or even on top of, now you have a connection point to the utilities without spending a whole lot of offsite utility connection costs. And that's probably the biggest thing in land, is understanding the utilities, the capacities, and the ability to connect to them without having enormous offsite costs.
So, most investors think money is made during construction, and some believe the biggest value is created before a shovel even hits the ground. Or that's what you believe, is that the biggest value that is created is before the shovel ever hits the ground. Can you walk us through the different stages of development and how people can invest before a building comes to life?
Yeah, so land is one of those assets that just cannot be reproduced more. Like, land is a finite resource. And the whole development cycle really starts from your raw land, and then it goes to land that has utility capacity, right? Sometimes if you're near utilities, but if the city does not have enough capacity of water or sewer to serve you, then that also doesn't bring that much value. So raw land with utilities access and capacity, and then you go through what is the entitlement process. So now that's the entitled land. Once you have the entitled land, now the developers start developing and building out the horizontals. Horizontals are the roads, streets, and utilities. And once those are in, now you could build the verticals, and these are your actual buildings, whether that's apartments, warehouses, data centers. Those are the verticals, and then you move into that stabilized phase where you're leasing it up, finding a tenant, and getting someone in the space to utilize them. So that's what I see the entire kind of real estate cycle is at. And then a lot of investors are in that, either building the vertical, stabilizing, selling, and then rebuying, and then kind of doing that value add stage. And that's like the latter stages of the real estate cycle. Whereas the land entitlement and development is really that first step of the development cycle.
Yeah. And what actually happens during that entitlement process, which is roughly about 24 months? People hear the word all the time, but nobody knows what the developers are doing for 2 years.
Yeah, so I think how I define a completion of an entitlement project is securing it is called the development agreement with the city. So essentially, the entire entitlement process is you collaborating with the city, so that the city manager, planning and zoning, public works, their utilities, basic fire marshal, basically the entire city. You work with them and plan out what you're planning to do with this parcel of land. You work with your engineers, your architects to design the lots, design the layouts, design the subdivision, design where the streets are going, where the utilities are going, where the drainage is going. And then you work with the city to get all of those approved. So once you have this entire approval of your entire engineering plans and all of that, then the city will give you a development agreement that says, okay, we have reviewed all of your plans, all of your studies, all of your surveys. They are in line with the codes and ordinances of the city, and we now approve of this plan. And so now you have this plan in place, and you follow the plan and you can start developing the horizontals for this plan. So the entitlement process is really the engineering, the architect bringing the utilities, working alongside with the city officials, and making sure that they are bought in, working with the community, and making sure that they're also bought in the project. And when you have total agreements with your own party, the city and the county, and also your neighbors, then you have this development agreements, and that's the entire kind of entitlement process.
And of those, what do you think is like the most difficult part of that entitlement process?
The two most difficult is zoning and utilities. I could talk about utilities first because land without utilities, you just really cannot build too much on, especially if you don't have access to water. Because if you think about it, an apartment complex of 100 units, you're going to have at least, say 2.5 person per household. You're going to have 250 people living in this apartment complex. And so you need access to running water. You also need access to sewer. Some projects you could get away with septic, but for a larger community, like a 100-unit apartment, it's very difficult to just use a septic, right? And then, so utilities is really important. We also talked about the offsite costs and the capacity. So sometimes even if there are utilities near your sites, if the city already maxed out their capacity in terms of how much water they could provide or how much sewer they could accept, then now you have to wait until the city upgrades their infrastructure. And it's a pretty large cost and a lengthy process for cities to plan it out, to actually develop it, and then have it ready for your development. So utilities is a big piece. The second is zoning, especially like our asset class that we like to be in. We like to be in manufactured homes and RV parks. And a lot of cities, they don't really like this asset class because of the mentality of stigma. And we'll talk about it later too, but also revenue versus the resources used for this asset class. So to get zoning for a less desirable kind of asset class is also quite challenging. So utilities and zoning would be probably the toughest for the entitlement process.
Yeah, RV parks does really sound challenging. I actually remember driving through a town where there were like posters protesting RV parks and homeless people essentially staying there. Or the city, like the people in the city were saying that they don't want this new RV park because they don't want homeless people moving in.
Yeah, and I think like I see this too, but in the South, there are actually really like nicely built RV parks that really kind of like, it's a stigma that it's homeless people living in RV parks. But in reality, when you actually check out most of the RV communities in the South, whether it's in Texas, Georgia, Arizona, wherever it is, like there are really nicely built communities where RV tenants, they have a really big like dignity like living there, and they upkeep their neighborhood. They like wash their neighborhood, and They build this like sense of community, and as such, a lot of RV parks that has this like community aspect, most tenants stay like 5 to 7 years as like an average tenancy, and it's kind of incredible.
Yeah. So let's talk about your recent deal where you recently turned a $1.8 million parcel into a $5.4 million appraisal without building a single home. Can you walk us through the numbers and the relationships that you needed to get this done?
Yeah. So this was a 102-acre acquisition in a smaller town, maybe 25 minutes south of Fort Worth. And the game plan for this is two phases. First phase is a manufactured home community of 68 half-acre lots. And then phase two is 250 manufactured home lots, but these are higher density. And the reason why we had to keep the phase one and phase two is because of sewer capacity. Phase one, the city only allowed us to have a capacity of up to 68 lots, and then we have to wait until the sewer infrastructure gets upgraded until we could do a higher density of about 250 lots. So that's the context. That's kind of the strategy in play here. We bought the parcel at 1.8 million, so that's about 18K per acre. We did a hard money loan based on a relationship at 10% interest, but that required a 20% kind of down payment, so roughly 360K. We set aside about 200,000 in debt service reserve. We also spent about 100K in engineering, about 50K in attorney fees, another 50K in surveys and like the different studies like environmental, boundary, topo, water, sewer. These are some of the surveys and studies that we had to get done. And so our all in is about 760,000. And we recently got that appraised for 5.4 million. And we only got the appraisal done because we were able to refinance into a better long-term debt. Now it's on like prime plus 0.25, and we were able to completely retire our hard money debt, as well as pull a little bit more money out for working capital, additional debt service, and to pay ourselves out a little bit more. But the appraisal was really we really got the appraisal after we got the rezoning done. So remember at first we talked about the two big hurdles. One is the utilities, and then the second is the zoning. And so we knew from the start our utilities capacity. The water was completely fine. We had enough water to serve up to 450 units, but it was really the sewer capacity that had issue. And that's why we had to go phase one and phase two. And once we figured out the utilities, the next step was to get the zoning done. And it was such a freaking challenge because throughout the entire process, the city kept telling us, nope, we're not going to give you the zoning for manufactured homes. This is not what we want in the city. And so there were constant battles with them. And in fact, it was quite stressful at the end when our hard money loan was coming due soon, actually. But two things that really got us through the hump. One is there was a recent Senate bill that basically a Senate bill is a state-sponsor Senate bill. And the goal and objective of the Senate bill was to build more affordable housing within Texas. And the mechanism to build these affordable housing is through manufactured homes, which requires now cities to have at least one manufactured home subdivision in their city limits. And within this little city, Venus, Texas, they actually don't have any zoning currently for manufactured home housing. And so because we made this request. We were in line, and we kind of rode the wave of this new Senate bill that the city had to comply to. So I think that was a big piece into getting the city to agree with our zoning change. And we were the first ever zoning change to get manufactured home within the city of Venus. And so now that we have the utilities in place, we also have the zoning in place. And that was when we were ready to do the refinance. So the bank ordered an appraisal, and we got the appraisal done at that point.
Wow. So did you know about this Senate bill that was about to pass, and before you purchased the property?
We knew that it was going to be introduced, but we didn't know if it was going to be passed or not. But one thing, during due diligence, right? The three things that we look for is one, the utilities, the two, potential like zoning, and then three is just the path of growth. The potential zoning kind of criteria was it passed our test because earlier in the podcast, I talked about every city has a comprehensive plan in terms of where do they see the city growing, where the utilities are going. But at the same comprehensive plan, they actually also have like, what do they think zoning of each of these future parcels might look like, feel like, be like. And our parcel happened to be a manufactured home community, even in their future development plan. But because there was a administration change, the administration was like, well, this future comprehensive plan was based on the last administration. Our current administration do not like the manufactured home community, so we're not going to approve that. So the answer is we had some tailwind coming into it, but I think that bill passing really gave us the final push to get us to that next hump.
Wow. And so what if it didn't pass? I guess where would you have taken it, or what would you and your partners have considered?
Yeah, and this happens all the time too, where it's like the city, if they don't want it, they'll just keep pushing you into like a circle. So our next step would have been taking them to court, just because one, they don't. A city cannot deny you just because they don't like your development. Like, we followed everything within the city ordinances and the code, and we also purchased this based on the fact that it was in their future land use plan. And so when we first purchased this property, we've consulted land attorneys, and we agreed that if the city was not going to play ball with us, we're going to have to sue them to get the zoning that we need, based on kind of all the criteria I listed. And in the past, we have done so as well, and we were able to walk away with it, because a lot of times these cities, their biggest argument is they don't think this is best for the city without any legal basis. And so if you take them to court, more than likely you will probably get what you want if you are following exactly what the code and the ordinance allows you to do. But this also will elongate our entitlement process by at least 6 to 8 months, and it will add additional costs into the attorney fees.
Okay. So let's talk about your partnerships and also like how you also positioned yourself. So I think you said earlier that you already have a two-phase plan on what this development is going to be. Do you have partners to kind of fill in that in that part? And then also, do you have other partners to work with you on this, to let's just say to put the capital together, etc.?
Yeah, so the first acquisition was fairly simple. We had one capital partner that pretty much just brought in the entire capital for the acquisition, the engineering, and all of our soft costs. so the first part was pretty simple. There's three partners in this particular deal. I'm one of them. One partner came with the the entitlement expertise and background. We had a capital partner, and then there's me who kind of put the whole deal together and kind of worked through the entitlement process. So that's kind of the partnership. And in terms of the disposition of the partnership, we actually have like a a Rolodex of developers that we've already worked with in the past. So like this is a manufactured home like community. My partner in this, he's actually entitled over like 5,000 manufactured home lots. So he already has a list of developer partners and buyers in the pipeline. That actually two of them already seen this and just waiting for us to get through more of the challenges. And how we typically like to structure the deal at disposition is either one, we sell it off completely to a development partner and they just take it and do whatever they need to do with it. But more recently, we've been trying to do a more creative approach where we contribute the entitled land lots as equity we contribute the entitled lots as equity into a deal, a JV deal with a development partner, and their responsibility is to develop it and stabilize it while we become like the silent partner and just contributing land. Right now, equity is a little tough for people, and so if we could contribute land and the developer needs to raise a little bit less capital to get this deal done, it kind of is a win-win situation for both us and the developers that we work with.
Cool. How did you get into like land development? Like, you know, you have these partners and stuff, but how did you start your career in it?
I would say I dabbled in a lot of strategies in real estate. And I just went out to really learn let me kind of go back one more time. So for me to learn and get into this land entitlement space, I really tried to understand that development cycle that we talked about earlier on, right? The raw land with utilities, entitled land, horizontal build out, vertical build out, stabilize. And so I really looked at that development cycle and saw kind of where a lot of people were at. A lot of investors, they're at that, like building the vertical, stabilizing, and then purchasing a stabilized asset, value add, rehabbing, resell it again. And before this, I was in the apartment space, and just seeing apartments get traded 3 to 4 years at a time so frequently, like all of the meat has been really squeezed out in a lot of these deals. And the more I was looking to scale in, the traditional asset classes like multifamily or even retail, it's really the same cycle, and there's just so much competition. And as you grow larger and larger, you're competing with institutions that don't quite care about the return as much. They care mostly about the depreciation, and their decision horizon is like 20, 30 years down the line. Whereas like an earlier investor like us, a more boutique one, like, we want to be exiting 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Like we can't be thinking 20, 30 years ahead. Like, we want to, but we're not there yet. And so that led me to kind of like start to think about land, because there's really not that many like players in this space. So I like businesses that are niche. I like businesses that don't have that much competition, and land really was that. And I was introduced to my partner now, Justin, through a family mutual friend. He was working in the land space. I was really intrigued, and I was like, Justin, I would love to just do work for free and learn from you. And then I think over time, that relationship really built. He saw a lot of value that I could bring to the table. And then I saw his expertise in the land space. I reviewed his numbers. I saw, like full cycles. Like at this point, he's probably done about 15 to 20 land entitlement deals full cycle from entitlement to disposition. And I see that and I want to learn from that. And so over time, when you provide enough value to someone, now you could start to negotiate for a partner position in these deals because you've learned so much and they kind of need your expertise now and relationships in these deals.
Cool. Very cool. It's like, I always love that. Like just getting the free education and bringing value just opens up so many doors,
Yeah, it does.
So how much of development is actually like engineering versus like psychology, negotiation, politics, and all that?
I would say it's pretty equal in parts. Like the engineering and all of that are the quantitative aspects of a deal, right? Like you just have to follow the code of ordinance. You have to just build to city code. Like that's a non-negotiable. And that's actually one of the easiest process. Like everything is drawn out for you already. But the zoning and the utilities, all of that is like a negotiation because when cities don't want something, now you have to give something to get something. So that whole negotiation piece is big to get what you want. And there's just so much politics involved, right? Like to the point where we had to find the state rep that voted for that same Senate bill that we were just talking about. And it happened that the state rep was representing this district that the city of Venus is in. So we're like, hey, we saw that you voted yes to this Senate bill, but we're getting some challenges with this city that wants to push back on a manufactured home subdivision. And so this contact of ours, they're like, hey, okay, I know the mayor of the city. Let me give the mayor a call. We know what you guys do. We've seen your history and your track record. You guys are really trying to build affordable housing that are good for the community. So he called the mayor, gave them a background of us, gave them, again, a background of the Senate bill. And then even then, the mayor was like, well, we'll have to think about it. So it's really a combination of the negotiations, the politics, the relationship, and then, the quantitative part, the engineering side.
Wow. Crazy. So, and speaking of affordable housing, a lot of people say, affordable housing is important. Everyone wants it until it's proposed in their neighborhood. So why do you think that is?
Two reasons. The first reason that people don't want affordable housing in their backyard is the stigma. But in reality, there has been so much innovation in mobile manufactured homes and RVs that, like, if you just visit any of the newer built ones, they are nice and they are highly amenitized, and they're so efficient. So I don't think stigma should be the reason nowadays. The number two, which I think is actually the bigger reason of why a lot of cities don't want affordable housing in their neighborhood is because of resources allocated versus tax revenue collected, right? One manufactured home versus one single family home. They both require the same resources of water and sewer capacity. We call it one LUE, one living unit equivalent. One manufactured home is the same as one traditional site-built single-family home, one LUE. And so they're providing one LUE of water and sewer to the same home. But cities, how do they make money in Texas? majority of the revenue is from property tax. And so if you're giving up the same resource, but you're collecting less tax revenue because traditionally a manufactured home would appraise lower than a single family home. And so the city collects less tax revenue as a result of that, which I think is actually the bigger incentive to say no to these affordable housing projects.
Wow. I didn't even think about that, the tax perspective. And do like the cities that you work within, I mean, are governments incentivized somehow to do affordable housing at all?
It's challenging, right? It incentivizes them to do affordable housing if it could get developers to build more. And it depends on the kind of affordable housing too, right? Like at the end of the day, if they're building like a apartment complex, a brand new one, it could attract, different tenants and different businesses that come along. Actually, I don't know the answer of that.
Yeah, because I mean, like from a lending perspective, right? There's like
Yeah.
incentives for agencies or governments or whatever to bring in affordable housing, and there's lending products that like reward you for doing that. But I'm just curious if there's incentives for cities to do it for whatever reason, and I'm not sure either. So
Yeah, that one
Yeah.
I'm not too sure.
Okay, so what's one opportunity in housing you think the market is underestimating over the next 10 years?
I think tiny home communities, because we're moving towards a world where there's just a lot more mobility in the younger generations. And so I envision a world where like, you, me, and Anita will have like a little tiny home all over the United States that we could travel to and work from and all of that. But really, I just think there's just so much innovation in prefab homes where the cost of construction reduces significantly. And also the time to construct also is reduced significantly. And when you can reduce these two, now your end user will also get a savings from that. And so that's one way to kind of go about the affordable housing space. We talked about the younger generation, but there's also the older generation where, the stats is like 10,000 baby boomers retire every year. And they don't necessarily need a large home to kind of retire in. They just need a nice, highly amenitized tiny home community where they could spend their time with people that they love and care, and also have money to spend on day-to-day life instead of just spending majority of your paycheck on housing. And then to add on to that too is like a tiny home community that's like even almost completely off the grid, right? We've resolved the electric problem, right? If you have solar and a large enough battery, you could technically go off grid. Sewer, you don't necessarily have to have sewer connections because you could build a septic and you could run off of that. And so the last piece is really the water that we need to figure out. And just recently, we met with two companies that convert atmospheric water into actual water, and they put it into like a tank. And so if you could solve the water, the sewer, and the electric, and have like these little tiny home communities where they have all three of these utilities all in one place, then you can build essentially anywhere in the world and provide housing for people. So that's what is getting me super excited for the next 10 years.
Are there communities like this right now?
Yes, but not really in America because of the like the legal and the political aspects to kind of get through the water source. So septic and solar those are good already. Like
Right.
we see a lot of communities that are just running completely on solar, completely on septic. Water is the gray area right now, because when you're dealing with water, you have to deal with the quality of the water and the consistency of water, right? Like, and this atmospheric water has to be in a certain condition, right? The one drawback that we saw so far was in Dallas, at least, they were producing good water from March to September. And then the winter months, when there's less humidity, like the water production becomes even smaller. So we had to kind of figure out the lower months before we could put something into use for this technology.
Very cool. That's why you have multiple tiny homes in different areas. So you just move to the one that has more
That's
water.
right. That's right.
Cool. Well, Chang, I appreciate your time today. I think this was really, really interesting stuff. And like you said, it's a very niche type of asset class that I think people don't really talk about or hear about. So it's really cool to hear from somebody who's been doing it for a while and just kind of what the process looks like. So if people want to find out more information or want to chat with you, how can people get in touch?
Yes, they could find me at our website, www.collectiveacre.com. They could also follow my Instagram, Collective Acre. We've been posting a lot more about land and development here in Texas.
Nice. Okay, cool. Well, that's all we got for today's episode. So if you liked this episode, give us a like on whatever channel you're listening to and leave us a review. We'll see you next time on the SARE Ladies Podcast.
Thank you, SARE Ladies.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the SARE Ladies Podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, make sure to follow, share, and leave us a review. It helps more women in real estate find this community. And don't forget to connect with us at sareladies.com for more resources, stories, and support on your investing journey. Until next time, keep building, keep learning, and keep breaking barriers.